Hello and welcome to the Beyond podcast. We are talking about the original 1977 classic Star Wars. I am the Universe 6 Assassin, Mediocrity 4.
I am really excited to start this series. I think this might be the podcast series that I've been the most excited to start in this group. And even though this will start as a Ruby group, I'm just really excited. This is the worst intro ever. Dude, what the heck? Totally should have planned that out better. It's terrible. I did a pretty bad one in the last season of Ruby. This was way worse. It's like, oh, wait a minute. This is just a little intro. Now I'm babbling, and I'm still babbling, and I'm just going to shut up and drink water.
Yeah, let Robert have his turn.
And I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I'm Robert.
Classic. I've done that one before.
Dang it! Thought it was being
it was like right after Rogue One came out, so it was like Volume 4, Episode 8 or something, I think.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry about that.
Sometimes I forget like which ones I've done and which ones I haven't. So I just know I haven't done that one before because that's from a very recent episode of. I think it was. I'm pretty sure that reference is like less than 2 weeks old.
Yeah. So for those of you joining that are either from our normal Ruby podcasts or from something completely different, or likely something completely different, we're going to be doing podcasts on all of the major Star Wars films and discussing, I think, the TV shows as well a bit. We're going to be filming these each Wednesday up until the release of the newest Star Wars film, The Last Jedi, and then we will also do a podcast on that one. I already have my tickets, by the way, for the Saturday after it comes out.
I need to do that. I need to.
So
my
fiance and I have our tickets.
Sells out over here.
She hates Star Wars, by the way. It's like the one thing that's like I don't like about her. She tried to watch Star Wars.
That's one of the few Star Wars and Batman are the two nerdy things that my dad is into.
Really?
Legit.
My dad loves Star Wars. My dad's what got me into Star Wars. My
Same.
fiance likes Ruby, but she hates, and she likes Lord of the Rings a lot actually, but she likes Harry Potter. She hates Star Wars though. So. Yeah, it's a winning combination overall, but I am dragging her to the movie the Saturday after it comes out, so I'll be ready for the podcast as well.
Yeah, my dad's a pretty big Star Wars fan. I asked him what he thought about some of this stuff that we got from this movie. So yeah, and my mom, she liked it, but it wasn't. She wasn't one of those big fans of it back in the 70s when it first came out, like others.
Sure. My mom doesn't care for Star Wars, but she loves crappy action movies. So what she calls chick flicks are like Mission Impossibles and stuff like that. She loves that shit.
Yeah, my parents were 4 and 5 respectively when this first movie came out. Yeah. And so it's especially hard for probably people about our age to think of a world before Star Wars, but yeah I mean.
Yeah, my parents were 12.
Before May 4th, or I think it was May 14th, 1977. Sometime in May 1977. Up until then, we did not have Star Wars, and kind of want to do some let my cinephile nature show, and do a little bit kind of background, because I think if we kind of start off by talking about George Lucas's prior 2 films before Star Wars, THX 1138 and American Graffiti. It surprisingly contextualizes how Star Wars came to be, and also how Star Wars turned into what it's ultimately turned into, for better or for worse. A lot will say worse. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
EA Star Wars Battlefront notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So THX 1138, which
these movies have gotten on a pretty good track.
Yeah, so THX 1138, by my metric, is pretty decent. I've actually seen it. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but curiosity and stuff. But it was definitely a visual and technical powerhouse movie for a student film. Obviously, it was never going to be 2001: A Space Odyssey, which came out almost a decade earlier. No, not a decade. 4 or 5 years earlier, because 2001 was 69. But for a student film, for what was ultimately a student film, it was really it really showed George Lucas's technical prowess behind the camera. Like, and we'll get into this here more than in the other podcast, but George Lucas was a very do-it-yourself kind of guy. He was very much a technician. Before he ever got into movies, he was actually into cars. Like, he would work on cars for a hobby. I think he wanted to be like a race driver, but then like a really bad car wreck in the early 70s dissuaded him, and that's when he went into film school instead. So you got THX 1138, and then you got American Graffiti, which introduced him to a wider audience.
And Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I was gonna say Harrison Ford.
And Ron Howard, who is directing the Han Solo movie now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah. Fuck, I forgot.
Yeah, after what's his face? Who was somebody else directing? Some lightweight.
Because despite not being a baby boomer, my first introduction to Ron Howard was in fact the Andy Griffith Show. I love the Andy Griffith Show.
Probably mine too. I remember seeing I think my introduction to Ron Howard was actually as a director with A Beautiful Mind, one of my all-time favorite movies, which he absolutely did deserve the Oscar for. Yeah. As a standalone movie, it was better than Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings doesn't really come together until you see all three movies.
No, I agree with
that. But that was the big that was the big movie that Beautiful Mind beat out at the Oscars.
Yes. No, and I love Lord of the Rings, but I wouldn't even pick Fellowship as the one to pick anyway. So
Me neither.
I agree with that. So, which might be something we talk about in a future podcast.
Yeah,
but we have a lot of Star Wars.
Lord of the Rings, we would talk about all in one podcast because it's all one big complete story.
Yeah. Originally, it was supposed to be one book, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But American Graffiti, dude, you said it's one of your favorite movies. I love it. I like it a lot.
I'm not saying it's one of the greatest movies. I'm saying I just personally connected with it a lot.
Yeah, it was very much.
Enjoyed.
It was very much of its time. It was very much the 70s, looking back at the 50s, and it was successful. It made bank at the box office. It wasn't like a Jaws level success, but at that point, nothing was. No. Nothing was a Jaws level success until Star Wars came around.
Until Star Wars came out. So yeah,
and changed.
But American Graffiti did well, and I think
it was nominated for Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. And so you get those two films, and George Lucas comes from a group of directors called the Film Brats. The Film Brats were the first generation of filmmakers who grew up with films as a constant part of their life. You go back before that, people like Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, they grew up with theater and then moved into film as it was developing and growing. Especially Hitchcock. Hitchcock started making TV stuff or not TV stuff, but theatrical stuff in the 20s, before like with silent films like The Lodger, and so there's a couple of them. Martin Scorsese was in there. Francis Ford Coppola is probably the.
I think Spielberg was in there.
Spielberg's the biggest one. Spielberg was a little bit younger than George Lucas and Coppola.
Yeah, Spielberg.
But they all went to school. They all went to school together. They all knew each other. They're all friends to this day.
Coppola worked on American Graffiti too.
Yeah, he was like a producer.
So,
I think
he's a producer.
He was going to produce Star Wars, I believe, but he got too wrapped up in Godfather.
Yeah,
which was,
he was willing to put up some money for Star Wars, but he just got too wrapped up in making the other greatest movie of the 70s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which, if we're talking about individual films, I actually have to give it to Godfather. Just saying. I think Godfather's a better film than Star Wars.
I'm weird. I actually like Godfather 2 a lot more than either of the other Godfather movies.
No. My dad also is a huge Godfather fan. He watches it every single year, and he also thinks Godfather 2 is at least as good, if not better, than Godfather 1. So.
That's one of those those few sequels that's widely considered to be one of the better than the original.
And I think a big part of that is it's from the same book. It's actually, they're just two halves of the same book.
And I think it also helps that the book is actually kind of trash. Like no, seriously, like Mario Puzo's Godfather book is like is like true crime fan fiction. It is like fan fiction level writing.
No, it helps
Which gave them a lot more leniency, and that's actually what I was going to get into next. Is something that the film brats tended to do is they, and this is like every other generational filmmaker. Like you see it a lot with Quentin Tarantino. You see it like all throughout Quentin Tarantino's career, and he would be like the next generation after that. But there were like two types of films in the early days of Hollywood, and I kind of touched on this a little bit with my top 10, with my most recent Top 10 Tuesday, where I was talking about horror films. You had because back then you had 5 big studios. There was RKO, MGM, Warner Brothers, Fox, and Paramount. And then you had everyone else, and the other guys who were making kind of successful films were Columbia. I believe Miramax was the other one, and Universal was the most successful of them because they were the ones making all the monster movies. But
damn, you really do know this shit.
I told you. So the thing is, like MGM, Warner Bros., they were making these big, epic films, like Gone with the Wind. Later on, Lawrence of Arabia would be kind of like the last hurrah of that whole studio system. 10 Commandments. Wizard of Oz was MGM.
Yeah, giant epics. Yeah.
Yeah, these big budget films, and then these other films, they had to make films on a bit more of a budget, and like Columbia, which I'm actually more familiar with early Columbia than I am early Universal, just because Columbia is the only director that they had on call was Frank Capra, who is one of my personal favorites. He directed It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, Capra's amazing.
Can't Take It With You. My second or third favorite movie of all time, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which I've talked about at length on several blogs and stuff, and even made a video about it.
You did.
You got me to think about politics for more than 30 minutes. That's an accomplishment.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the glory of that movie right there. But kids didn't see these big budget films. Like, yeah, they saw Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz was directed towards kids. That was same thing with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was actually distributed by RKO. It was developed by Disney, but RKO Productions is what fronted all the money for it because Disney was still like pretty small. And that was kind of like what made Disney successful, is that he made connections with the big studio heads and was like, hey, I'll make you this cartoon for cheap for you, but you have to ignore that Fleischer guy in New York. That's how Disney like got as big as it was, as fast as it did. It's just kissing ass to all the big Hollywood studios, especially RKO back then.
Yep.
And so it was actually the cheaper films, especially the nickel theaters, that the kids would go see, and that's what.
Oh, Nickelodeons.
Yeah, Nickelodeon theater. Well, Nickelodeons were more like for theatrical cartoons, but dime store theaters, which would play all sorts of different theatrical shorts and stuff. The big one for George Lucas being Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Flash. Savior of the universe.
Yeah, I know
that. That's the 80s version of Flash Gordon. But Flash Gordon was a big inspiration to him, as was Akira Kurosawa, who was getting big in the 50s, and who was like the first really big Japanese filmmaker that like crossed over to America and actually had his film studied in the first like film schools, and he's still studied in film schools to this day because he's a master technician. And so George Lucas started having like this idea of kind of Akira Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress by way of Flash Gordon, and
originally what he wanted to do was a Flash Gordon movie.
Couldn't get the rights because whatever.
Flash Gordon movie with the feel of Hidden Fortress.
Well, with the plot structure of Hidden Fortress.
Right.
Like, I guess this is a good place to touch on it now. Flash Gordon, pulpy, serial, sci-fi, shenanigans. Hidden Fortress, lesser known, so I'm going to take a minute to kind of explain what how that movie factors into Star Wars.
I don't even know what it is. So
it's a samurai film. And
I knew that part, but
it's this kind of like feudal era epic adventure. But the cool thing about it is that it's got all these like big important characters like a princess, a samurai, a peasant who turns into a samurai, stuff like that. But it's told from the perspective of two peasants, the two comic relief characters. It's told entirely from their perspective, which is actually how the first Star Wars movie is structured.
Yeah.
With R2-D2 and C-3PO.
Yeah, it kind of takes a more lighthearted perspective. The dynamic between Luke and Han, and that's kind of what made it unique for the time is that, usually you have these movies that, were these. Sorry, you guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, you guys were moving there, but so yeah, they kind of took this more kind of a more serious plot, but then looked at it through a more slightly more comedic lens, so it kind of had that feeling of being, more far-reaching, reaching out to more far-reaching audiences. You were able to get out to younger audiences and adult audiences. So
yeah, and that's kind of that's a genius in simplicity, and this is something Wizard of Oz is probably an even better example of. And I was tweeting someone a little bit. It wasn't really back and forth. He made a tweet and I replied to it. Talking about Blade Runner 2049, which came out. This guy, it's Razor Fist. He's like the biggest Blade Runner fan you'll ever hear talk about Blade Runner. He hates 2049 with a burning passion. And he articulated very well in at least one video where he did a full-on review of the film. And he's tweeted about it pretty much ever since it was announced. And one of the more like striking criticisms he made at that film is that it felt less like Blade Runner and more like it didn't feel as inspired by Blade Runner as it felt inspired by movies inspired by Blade Runner.
Okay.
Like it was less Blade Runner and more Ghost in the Shell. Less Blade Runner, more Inception. Less Blade Runner, more The Martian or other films.
But
more Akira. And I replied to him something along the lines, someone replied to him at first, saying that like, well, take away Blade Runner's striking visuals and visual aesthetic and groundbreaking technical acumen, and what do you got? It's a really simple story. Like, that's kind of the point. It is just this simple story told in a really good way. And same thing with Wizard of Oz, which is one of the most important movies ever made. And maybe not one of the best. It might not be your favorite, but it's one of those movies that everyone can enjoy because of how important it is and just how simple and sugary it is. And Star Wars is right there. It's a really simple story. Kind of the perfect story.
Yeah. And this might be a good time. Do we want to go into kind of like Joseph Campbell and what kind of came from that?
Yes, that's actually what I had next on my bullet point list.
Yeah.
Is Joseph Campbell, which either of you actually read A Hero of a Thousand Faces?
Nope.
I skimmed through it, so I'm familiar with it and what it kind of talks about. But
I read it. It's by no means a textbook on how to write a story. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. It's all observation on how just the way the human mind works tends to categorize stuff in certain ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And Star Wars it hits all the bullet points. Not quite. There's a review of The Force Awakens that was talking about like Force Awakens leans way heavier on A New Hope than A New Hope did on Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. And I think that is really true.
That's going to be fun to talk about when we talk about Episode 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's the same fucking movie.
Yeah, it's definitely... You definitely have a lot of the influences of what Joseph Campbell talked about, particularly like with the hero's journey. You have... Because, kind of like you said, it's a very old and very, like, it goes all the way back to, like mythology, Greek mythology and all of that, with the way of the hero's journey and the way that it works. But what Star Wars does is that it kind of takes that classic trope, but then it makes it very, I don't know, it manages to do it in a very original way by making, the monster in the fortress a space station and, having it take place in space. Like, it's all very,
yeah, that kind of,
it's a Western in space. That's what Star Wars is.
Yes, it's that, and it's also a fantasy.
Western in space. It's the movie that killed the Western genre, which I'm slightly bitter of because it's the beginning of the it's past the beginning of the end for the Western, but there's no need for the Western when stuff like this exists, basically.
Which Toy Story 2 kind of nailed on. Toy Story actually.
Yeah. That was really
Toy Story. And it's funny because John Lasseter / Pixar and stuff were actually started by Lucasfilm.
Yeah. And I'm a huge Western
fan. I think they were very aware of that with all the with the many Star Wars references in Toy Story.
And the fact that they're all toys, which was like very light commentary on how Star Wars quickly became more about merchandising than about making good movies or movies in general. But
it definitely was a huge part of its success and its cult success, definitely.
And well, and the whole sci-fi genre was still, as far as that style of sci-fi goes, was still relatively new.
Yeah, like mostly you have like these big sophisticated ships and stuff like that. Like Star Trek and stuff like that is a very
Star Trek started in the late 60s. Doctor Who was early 60s. Doctor Who started in 1962. 2001: A Space Odyssey was 1969. That was probably like the biggest space movie up to that point. And before then,
and this was the first time
I can't really think of a major film that was that style of sci-fi, because before then, sci-fi was more characterized by movies like Metropolis, Frankenstein.
Which is not what we think of when we think of sci-fi.
And later on with like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Day the Earth Stood Still.
We associate sci-fi almost more with fantasy nowadays in a lot of ways. They
get grouped up in libraries now.
I mean, Star Wars is a sci-fi / fantasy. It's not just a sci-fi.
And in my opinion, it leans way heavier into fantasy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about it, actually. And I don't want to sound bitter about the Western thing. Westerns are my favorite genre of film overall, but I do love sci-fi and fantasy. And I mean, the book I'm writing is a sci-fi fantasy book, so I'm not like against the fact that sci-fi movies got as big as they did. Not at all. I mean, the Marvel shit, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like about Marvel comics in general, and that's also what I like about that's kind of one of the things I like about Ruby. I like that it's this mix of sci-fi and fantasy. I like it when genres get blended like that. So long as the pieces are at least borderline cohesive, I'm on board with at least that aspect of it.
Yep. Yeah. And if you like Western and sci-fi, there was Firefly.
Yeah, Firefly. And Cowboy Bebop was a big one.
I still need to see Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, you would love it.
I probably would love it.
I started watching Trigun a little while ago, probably.
Trigun is pretty cool. Trigun is a lot more like Mad Max, though. It's like if Mad Max was an anime.
More of a,
If Mad Max was an anime and Max was Max.
I actually did not love the original Mad Max that much, but I did love the most recent version,
I don't love any of them.
Which is basically just Death Race.
Okay.
It's just a good Death Race. That's all the newest Mad Max movie was. Which
I'm not crazy about any of them.
It was executed well. It was fun as fuck, but it wasn't
good.
I'm weird. My favorite one is Beyond Thunderdome. That's like no one's favorite Mad Max movie, but it's like the only one I kind of like.
It did give that Great Simpsons episode, Great Simpsons episode title, Beyond Blunderdome. That's all I remember from it. I'd never seen Beyond Thunderdome. Anyway, back to Star Wars.
Yeah, sorry.
See, guys, anybody watching, you can tell we're a good podcast because we still haven't even gotten to the movie yet. That's a good podcast. That's what the Collectional Podcast does, and they're pretty successful.
Yeah, this whole podcast is way more setting the stage than any of the other ones are, because we really need to emphasize just the fact that Star Wars changed everything. It changed the way movies were made. It changed the way movies were marketed. It changed the way movies made money back with merchandising and stuff. It changed
merchandising.
Where the real
money from the movie is made. Spaceballs, the coloring book. Spaceballs, the DVD.
Yeah.
Spaceballs. Oh, God willing, we'll all meet together in Spaceballs 2. The search for more money. I'm really mad that we never got Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
I am too.
Oh God, I love Spaceballs. Was my favorite comedy movie of all time for a long time.
Yeah, it's up there for me too.
And so that Fish Called Wanda, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Those are like my trifecta of comedy movies right now. So anyway, but no, it did change everything. I mean, that's what Spaceballs was making fun of. I mean, Spaceballs was a little bit of Star Trek spoof, but it was mostly a Star Wars spoof.
Yeah,
almost.
For the most part,
and that's a very beloved comedy movie on its own.
Well,
because of Star Wars.
That was Mel Brooks actually taking a swing at something he wasn't as familiar with. Mel Brooks is very much, even though he might have gotten big in the 70s and 80s, he was very much a figure of old Hollywood. Which is why his first and most successful movies are like Blazing Saddles, which makes fun of westerns, Young Frankenstein, which makes fun of the Universal monster movies. History of the World Part 1 makes fun of the epics by MGM and Paramount with like Ten Commandments and stuff.
The producers.
Yeah, the producers, which just made fun of Broadway. Pre-movie, pre-Hollywood.
Mel Brooks was making fun of these movies long before, guys like...
Where Spaceballs, and he said it was like... He said in an interview that Star Wars wasn't his thing. Like, he thought it was okay, but his kids loved it. His kids loved it, and he wanted to... And he thought by kind of deconstructing it, he could kind of find something else to love about it, something that he could actually love about it as well. And according to him, he succeeded. Like, he actually, like, by making fun of it and pointing out all the tropes and stuff, he actually, like, grew to admire the movie a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah,
plus, and he started, one of the funniest fucking movies ever. I mean,
and that's where you get all
die these, every time I see the asshole scene. It's the fucking
keep firing assholes.
Yeah, that in we're in now. When will Vengeance?
That's one of the greatest cinematic moments ever. I talked about this on a stream. I think it was on a stream. It was either that or it was when no, it didn't end up making it to the stream. It was when I was setting up for a stream with Cameron. I was showing him like how OBS and stuff worked. And I was like, "What's happening here is happening now." We did. I did that to him. I was like, watch Spaceballs. I need to make you watch Spaceballs.
I love. Oh god. Okay, but yeah, Spaceballs wouldn't exist without Star Wars. It's the whole reason it exists. And the difference is with all those other ones. Okay, technically, Young Frankenstein is making fun of Frankenstein, but it's really making, like as BD said, fun of just the monster movies in general. Whereas,
but by taking a shot at the biggest, most successful, and far and away, in my opinion, the greatest of the Universal monster film lineup.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with that for sure. The funny thing is if you watch the Spanish version of Dracula, it's way better than the English version of Dracula. That's a funny little thing too. If you watch the Spanish version, it's a lot better. But it's better acted. That's one of the biggest things. The guy playing Dracula fucking destroys it. It's awesome. But the difference is that with Spaceballs, that existed almost entirely because of Star Wars. Technically, it makes a couple Star Trek jokes, but that's not why the movie existed.
Yeah, there's also like an alien joke in there. And...
Yeah, but it exists because of Star Wars. Let's be honest. So whereas the other ones are more making fun of a broader, like a genre, or like a style or something like that. So that's kind of one example of what Star Wars has done. I mean, there's also the fact that George Lucas is worth several $1 billion. That might be part of it too.
I just loved like kind of this little anecdote that Young Frankenstein was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. for adapting Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Like, it legit got nominated for an Oscar for that. Like, I love that. I love that so much.
Peter Boyle and Gene Wilder. I mean, goddamn, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong.
Who played Igor? Hold on, I need to look this up.
Can we also point out that Peter Boyle looks exactly the same in that movie as he does in Everybody Loves Raymond? Like, exactly the same. He like became 65 and then be 65 for the rest of his life.
Yep.
But Gene Wilder.
Marty Feldman played Igor.
Oh, yeah.
Igor.
Yeah, Marty Feldman. Yeah, shit. How did I forget that? Marty Feldman's great.
I had to Google it.
So, anything more you need to set up about Star Wars?
I mean, I was gonna go into like the more technical aspects, like the fact that 20th Century Fox, because of American Graffiti's success, were willing to put up a decent amount of money for this, but not any more than what other studios were putting up for genre films at that time. Yeah. And because of that, they couldn't really afford to...
They were more in love with George Lucas as the director.
And
the idea of Star Wars,
yeah. And no effect studio was willing to, like, they thought it was impossible. Like, you can't do stuff like this with this technology. So he was like, yeah, he's a very do-it-yourself kind of guy back then. He ended up making Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah.
Just for the purpose of, yes, you can. Yes, we can. We can do this. We actually can make this.
Although,
if anybody's ever watched and enjoyed MythBusters, we probably wouldn't have MythBusters if it wasn't for Star Wars.
Oh God! Look up ILM.
Yeah.
Like
50%
of every special effects driven movie in the last 40 years has been done by ILM, and the other half has been done by Wembley, which started as a bunch of people who decided to leave ILM and start their own company.
And I gotta say, actually, I was surprised. It's been a little while since I've watched this, the first 3 original Star Wars movies. And watching this one even, and I was like, shit, the effects held up a lot better than I was expecting. I was shocked. I was like, I mean, okay, yeah, you can see the differences. But
you can definitely tell that a lot of the backgrounds in the Death Star are paintings.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're not looking too hard, and I wasn't looking too hard, the funny thing is my biggest complaint in terms of effects in the whole film is the fact that the guy who gets his arm cut off, the wound doesn't get seared by the lightsaber like it does in every other Star Wars film later.
Oh, yeah.
That's my biggest complaint is there's...
That's a retcon, though.
That's a retcon, but still, that's my biggest complaint. But, I mean, what I think I appreciate about you kind of talk about simplicity is as epic of an effort as this film was, what he did to make things look better than he could with his budget is they kept it actually fairly simple. Like, there wasn't that many settings. There weren't that many settings. Sorry if I can speak English properly.
Yeah, that's where, like,
which helped keep it simple, and they were able to do those effects better, I think. And also, they didn't go crazy. Like, they wrote in a reason why they didn't send the fleet to the Death Star. And there was only so many fighter planes. I mean, if you look at it, if you watch Rogue One and then you watch Episode 4, you watch New Hope, you're gonna wonder why there wasn't more stuff because there's a huge
Darth Vader's gonna throw you for a loop.
Yeah, but also there's a huge fleet of Rebel Alliance in
Rogue One.
In Rogue One, and then there's but I mean, really, otherwise, I'm watching the film and I'm watching the dogfights and everything, and it actually looks pretty damn good. Like, I'm not like I was thinking about it, but I was like, shit, that actually looks good still.
Yeah, I plan on going more in depth about this with Empire Strikes Back, just because it's something that came to my attention when listening to Irvin Kershner's director commentary on Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. But the locations in Star Wars are very rarely anything exotic. Yeah. Which you look at Star Trek and Doctor Who and all these other sci-fi shows, Lost in Space, stuff like that. Even Flash Gordon to a lesser extent. they had these like really crazy looking planets and crazy looking aliens. And, like, yeah, there's some crazy looking aliens in Star Wars as well, but at least the locations were always like, this is your desert planet, this is your jungle planet, this is your swamp planet, this is your ice planet.
Jungle, this is a big metal box. Yeah.
This is the Death Star. It's basically
this is
just
your
a
gas
mall.
This is your gas planet. I mean, that
The benches are just elephants with big furry things thrown on them. So yeah.
Yes, they are.
But it works. Like, it's believable. Honestly, I think they did.
It makes it a little more believable. It makes it a little more believable. Like, I made this crack in my most recent review with the gravity dust and the newest episode of Ruby, and how it's so much more believable within Ruby than the floating islands in Avatar. Like, you try getting too exotic and you lose that functionality, which is one of Star Wars' strongest suits. Is even though, like, with our modern understanding of engineering, none of these things would work the way they should be.
Can I just say real quick, suck it, James Cameron, Miles and Carrie did something better than you.
A little bit.
I hate James Cameron with a burning passion, and I hate his movies because besides Terminator 2, I don't think anything he did was that great.
The first two Terminators and Titanic. I really like Titanic.
I hate Titanic.
It's like my mom's favorite movie.
The plot of Titanic, I understand what it did well, but the plot is just...
I just hate what he did to aliens.
And that was Leo, right?
Titanic?
Yeah, was it Leo?
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio.
I love Leo, but
it was him and Kate Winslet.
But I still hate Titanic. I hate it.
Yeah, I don't like Avatar very much, and I really hate aliens. I kind of hate aliens. But like, one of the most distinct features of Star Wars, and probably the thing that got copied the most, is the whole idea of the used future, where like, you know, you look at Star Trek, which was Star Trek's the easy example because that was like really, really huge even back then. Everything is all nice and shiny and exotic and cool looking. Where Star Wars, it looks like that the Millennium Falcon looks like it's about to just freaking crap out on the heroes at any given moment. And in Empire Strikes Back, it does like 5 times.
It does. Yeah.
What's the first thing that Luke says when he sees it? What a piece of junk!
Yeah.
And that's like every ship.
I keep forgetting that like the ship craps out in Empire instead of in New Hope. Because when he was that's right, doesn't happen. They do get to Alderaan. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, but like even the Death Star, which the inside of the Death Star looks like really eerily clean, but the outside of it, you can see like where it probably got pelted with meteorites, and you can see like some scuff marks on it, especially
and
in
I think
the
that's
like
partly to contrast the rest of what you're seeing in Star Wars.
And also just the fact that
like Tatooine is like, I love what they did with Tatooine.
Filmed it out in Tunisia.
Tatooine is fantastic.
Yeah, and you can even forgive kind of the Empire for having a nice base and stuff like that because they're the evil Empire. They have the resources to make everything look nice. All these other people, they're just scrounging by on what they've got and stuff like that. So.
Not only that, but there's this kind of like cultural paradigm that Star Wars really just hit the sweet spot in it. And where like, you know, you had this disenfranchised youth back then that were kind of rebelling against their more stiff, strict parentage that would have grown up in the 50s.
Yeah.
And the Empire kind of like represented that. It represented this like British imperialism post World War II strictness, whereas you know,
whereas they all have British accents for some reason.
Whereas like the rebels and Luke, they were like homebody, Midwestern types. And I mean the entire Force, as embodied in A New Hope, it gets way more fleshed out in Empire Strikes Back. Is more just like a go with the flow. You're doing the right thing. Just let the Force guide you, man.
Yeah.
It really tapped into the culture there, which led to its success as much as anything.
Yeah, and they even tapped into kind of the they also kind of tapped into the culture of the kind of older audiences too, because in case you didn't notice, or in case this hasn't been talked about for years now, Darth Vader's helmet is the helmet of a Nazi stormtrooper. So, and like the Empire is essentially the Nazis. So,
Yep.
Yep,
they're
the third Reich if they actually
come
come over.
out to many
it's
different ages. So, yeah.
And the rebels are bored. I mean, it's true. They like even the accents are different. Like besides the Princess Leia, like all the
Which
rebels,
her accent goes back and forth.
yeah,
It kind of does, yeah.
That one line,
more not kind of British.
Even more kind of British.
Isn't that what Nostalgia Critic?
The Nostalgia Critic. That's one of my favorite Nostalgia Critic jokes of all time. Because that line it's just, he's 100% right.
I love that line.
The most kind of British line ever. And then you have
with her, given like the situations that she's in, which we can talk about when we talk about the actual movie. But yeah.
But then you have like the relationship between Biggs and Luke, which I didn't even really notice until I watched it this time.
Yeah, it's in the
plot.
It's in the script, but a lot of it got cut.
Yeah, a lot of it got cut. I know there was a scene.
That's one thing from the extended editions that I do like, that they established a little more of Luke and Biggs' relationship. So.
Yeah, but I mean, even just like at the basis of like the fact that we used to shoot womp rats in our T-16s and shit like that sounds like a Midwest fucking thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it totally is.
It's like the Desert Hick kind of thing. Like
you go and shoot something. Yeah,
I mean, Biggs even has a '70s porno stash, for crying out loud. It's you know what I'm saying? Like they got all that parts, all those.
If all their vehicles didn't float, they'd go mudding.
Yes. They would.
That was one thing that I didn't like about the Family Guy parody that they did, where it's like, there's two sons and no women. What else am I supposed to do?
I love the red joke, all the red call signs. I think that's still my favorite part of the.
October standing by.
Big red standing by. Helen Reddy standing by. That was pretty good. One of Family Guy's less retarded moments for sure.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
But no, I love the line Leia has with that fake British accent. The tighter you hold your grip, the more planet systems will slip through your fingers. Also, the whole Governor Tarkin, I recognize your foul stench as soon as I was brought on board.
Yeah.
And Peter Cushing's bitch, you what?
More kind of.
I think there's a reason why it kind of fluctuates. I think part of it is just that she's trying to seem regal for these guys, and we see the real her when they bust her out and she just starts yelling at everyone.
Oh my god, I love her in that scene.
That's actually something that I really love about Rebels, this TV show, is they did an amazing job of kind of keeping both of her sides from how she's portrayed in other things, but it does a good job bridging the gap of how much she is like her mom. Yeah. Which I think was actually something we could talk about. That's later too, but I mean, and I actually start to like Leia more and more. She's almost like Qatar in that I appreciated Leia a lot more in this round of watching it than I did the first few times that I watched it, for sure.
I think she kind of gets. Yeah, I think she actually kind of gets a little weaker as a character as the trilogy goes on. But my favorite moment is the whole, well, somebody's got to save our skins! She just starts opening fire. Han and Luke are pushing out so hard, and she's just like, you guys, I'm fighting. I ain't going back in that prison cell.
That was a nice little turn on the, okay, you've saved the princess, and now she's going to save you guys. Yeah.
I always think I think the reason why I didn't appreciate Leia more was because I actually liked the Spaceballs version of Leia more. Princess
Vespa.
Princess Vespa, they up the badassery so much.
That was pretty good for Rambo.
Yeah. So much more with her that I kind of was used to that. So.
Yeah.
Anyway. No, I'll agree. Leia's a little bit. Well, we can get into that when we get into those films, I guess.
Well, yeah.
And my opinion might change because I haven't seen 5 and 6 in a long time yet. In the same amount of time it's been since I've seen 4, so you know. But I'm saying I liked her a lot more in this movie than I remember liking her in this movie previously.
So I'm gonna get into casting since we just talked about Carrie Fisher, who passed away almost a year ago now.
Very sad. Yeah.
So George Lucas, he wanted young actors in the leads, and he got that. He's somehow got a hold of Mark Hamill before anybody knew who Mark Hamill was. And same thing with Carrie Fisher, which Carrie Fisher had grown up in Hollywood and grown up with like those kind of connections, being the daughter of Debbie Reynolds, who Debbie Reynolds is a legend in her own right. Or was again. Oh God, that's right. She died like 2 days after Carrie Fisher. That sucked. Like, oh my God. And then the memes where like she died of a broken heart, just like Princess Leia's mom.
The memes of the feels, that was not fun.
But Harrison Ford was a little bit of an offset because he wasn't big, but he had been in movies before. He had been in a couple films.
He had a few. He had a few titles under his belt, but he wasn't.
Yeah, but they were mostly small roles. Like he was most known for American Graffiti back then, and even in American Graffiti, he only gets like 10, 15 minutes of screen time.
He was dope in those 10 to 15 minutes, though.
Yes, he was.
I think.
There's a reason why he's the one who became like a superstar after this. He's got the charisma to do it.
And like all proper Hollywood leading badasses, like from his time on, he didn't get huge until his 30s. I don't know why that's a thing, but you got him, RDJ, Chris Pratt, all those people, like anybody like that, you name them, they're all
Sylvester Stallone.
No, all those guys, none of them get like huge until their 30s. It's really weird. I don't understand it, but that's a thing.
Well, Harrison Ford was. He was actually one of those guys. He was a carpenter by trade, and he would build. He worked in Hollywood in his 20s and stuff, but he built sets. And then when they would need an extra, he'd be there. He'd smile in front of the camera. He'd be in the background shots and stuff like that. It wasn't until he started like.
That's what. Go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't until he started working with I want to say worked with Francis Ford Coppola at one point. Francis Ford Coppola introduced them, but I might be wrong on that. I just know he started talking with George Lucas when he was making American Graffiti, and they hit it off. And so that's kind of how that started. And then he wound up playing Han Solo in Star Wars because he was the only one who could nail George Lucas's ham-fisted dialogue. And Harrison Ford's words. You can write it, but you can't speak it.
Yep. Yeah.
I gotta say, Harrison Ford, I mean, as many things like, you think like, oh man, this part was really, this is better than I remember, this is really good, like, as I'm watching this film, and a lot of the stuff, when we were watching Avatar again for the first time in so long, it's like, oh man, this is amazing. No, I don't think anything struck me as much, besides just how awesome Toph is in Avatar, is how awesome Harrison Ford fucking is. Like, you can totally get, he just, it's like, you can see why it's like, he's a carpenter first. It's like, he's not, you don't feel like he's an actor. And I don't mean that as in an insulting way and like he doesn't know how to act. It's like, but it's like he's not acting. It's just like, he is that fucking cool. Like he gives so few fucks. Like that is just how he is.
Yeah, over my dead body.
Yeah, and not gonna lie, he's a fucking handsome dude. He's badass. He fucking pulls all that shit off.
Looks, he's like, what, 73 now? And he looks good for 70,
it's
for
being
crazy.
In his 70s.
Yeah,
and he's got that thing about him, and like, that's one of the stories of like, that's how he's able to pull off being a fucking nerdy professor wearing like baggy, khaki pants and still looking badass as Indiana Jones too. And he adds his touch to everything, like the Indiana Jones thing, because I'm into like clothing and stuff like that. The reason he wore those, like the Alden Indy boots, like that's why they're called the Indy boots. They originally called the Alden 402. They're called the Indy boots because of Harrison Ford wearing them as Indiana Jones. And the reason they were worn was not because they were a set piece or whatever, because spoiler, anytime Hollywood people try to like do set things, it's almost always wrong. They get it completely off. Watch the thing where they try to do who's the guy from the Sex Pistols? They had an actor play him like wearing his engineer boots with the jeans tucked into the boots. Hollywood has no idea what the fuck they're doing. Harrison Ford insisted on wearing those. Or I don't know if it was insisted, but somewhere the story is that Harrison Ford wore those boots as a carpenter, and that's why they made it into the film. Something along those lines. Somebody will correct me. There's something probably more specific, but that's the kind of thing. Like he insists, like it was him that brought those boots in. Like he brings his own kind of feel to all of his.
Yeah, well, and the reason being is
that so cool. Basically, he's just that fucking cool.
Is that
you watch his interviews too. He's that cool. He's the guy like saying like even in the interviews like Han shot first. Like he's a fucking champion of that too.
What did he say? What did he say to him and Adam Driver? We're talking like Jimmy Fallon or someone, or maybe it was Jimmy Kimmel. I can't remember. But Han said something. I think Han was like setting up a joke, and then Adam Driver like completely undercut him, and they just gave each other this look like, motherfucker.
Yeah, because Harrison, he is that like that tough and that no nonsense. So
and, you know, a lot of like costume design and stuff is more about like, does it look good on camera? Does the camera like capture the detail, the appropriate amount of detail? They don't really care about if it's realistic or not. Like they set up stuff just to be on camera.
I think that's another thing that I actually appreciated going through the movie again this time as well, is the costume design. I actually really liked also. It's like it's another little lesson in simplicity in that what they're wearing isn't crazy. It's not that, you know,
I am in love with the Imperial uniform.
Yeah, the Imperial.
I want to buy myself an Imperial uniform one of these days.
Good. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's similar enough to like, you know, what we have in real life, like with the way they have the things pinned on them or whatever. But it's different. It's a great blend. What Luke wears is like what he wears. It's not that dissimilar from what you would expect somebody on a fucking desert planet to wear. It makes sense. It's not
it's
crazy exotic or weird.
It's white. It doesn't draw in a lot of stuff, but it keeps the
Harrison Ford's outfit. It's also similar. Like it's different enough that it's not something you'd actually see a person wear, but it's not super crazy. It's not like Ruby levels of like costume. You know, it's just very simple vest.
Well, I think Ruby
does very simple Henley shirt.
Yeah, I think Ruby for the most part kind of does this all right. Final Fantasy is the one that somebody just needs to go to whoever designs their characters and just bludgeon them to death.
It depends on the Ruby character. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the things.
Yeah.
Yang's most recent outfit, as much as I like it, those coattails are fucking ridiculous. They're cool, but it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else, or I don't know, just another fun example of like some actors taking things or doing things differently, kind of with costuming. Peter, fun fact is that just one of the funnier facts that I noticed is that Peter Cushing, the boots that he had to wear for this,
they were too small, and he had to wear slippers. I would have paid.
There were a couple scenes where I was all like, I heard him walking out, I was all like, he's wearing slippers right now, isn't he?
Dude, you want to talk about a freaking pro?
Along the point, like, those sound like slippers. So, yeah, because he was wearing fuzzy slippers because the shoes they got were too small. That was hilarious.
You want to talk about a pro? Fucking Peter Cushing, man.
Oh, he killed it. He was
a scary dude. He was a scary dude in the movies, but you get him in interviews and stuff, and he's like the most posh, prim and proper, just the world's most British man. What did Mark Campbell say about him? He was so polite that he had gloves that he would keep in his pocket that he would put on just to shake people's hands because he didn't want to get the tobacco juice on them from when he smoked.
He fucking nails it. He was awesome.
He was a tall bastard too.
I am disappointed that they had him killed in that film because I wanted him in the next two because he's that awesome.
There are some people who kind of feel like he kind of stole the show from Darth Vader in a way. There's some.
Well, I mean, he was Darth Vader's superior. that was his job. He was the man holding Vader's leash in that film.
Yeah.
He did.
Darth Vader was plenty terrifying in his own right, but Tarkin was he was terrifying.
That's the thing. I was more terrified of Tarkin in this film than I was of Vader. Vader doesn't get scary until 5. Is the next film.
Vader is kind of mysterious, and he's kind of like
he's mysterious in this film, and he gets scarier in the next one because Cushing is the guy. The way Tarkin's the one who's scary now.
The way he's been described to me, and the way I've kind of taken to describe him, at least as far as episode 4 goes, is he is the man who walks amongst the dead bodies. He is the one who comes in at the end of that opening, that
when he makes
cinematically brilliant, completely groundbreaking opening sequence with the ships and stuff, and those were models. Those were pretty sizable models, and they had to have like the camera on rails to do the shots, and then all the lasers in this they actually use cell animation for.
Oh wow!
So they had to like paint that onto the frame each time.
It looked actually really good. It still held up. I was impressed.
Yeah, I mean it's basically the same as doing it in CGI. It's just a little more tedious.
Yeah. But it worked. And
something that,
but Vader, like, he walks in that ship in the first time you see him, and he's not holding a weapon. He just looks, and I don't know how they did this. And they do it throughout the entire trilogy. How do they make Vader emote so much without ever showing his face?
Yeah.
Like, between David Press's body acting, James Earl Jones' voice, John Williams' score, George Lucas's camera work and editing skills.
Yeah.
They just somehow, like, there's several sequences, even in this film, where you hear the gears turning in his head. Like, when he senses Obi-Wan, and he's like, that presence. I haven't felt that since. And then he just walks off.
And I think, that scene was amazing. Because James Earl Jones combined. It's amazing because you don't realize that when you're watching it, you don't realize that David Price and James Earl Jones are doing things separately and not even at the same time.
James Earl Jones wasn't even
the way he just slightly tilts back, the way David Price slightly tilts back, the way James Earl Jones delivers that line, the way he kind of trails off, and then how rapidly David Price walks off. I think that was a big part of it too. The walk. I think the walk actually.
There's a sense of urgency when Darth Vader senses something going on.
Yes, the urgency, the way the cape swishes, like no, that's real. That part is really well done. Like all of those elements combined extremely well to make something like that, where a guy who has no face. Yeah. You never really think that Vader doesn't have a face. That's one of the things. I think that's the biggest compliment you can think of, is that you don't really think of him as having no face. I think that's
that's
the
visual
design
storytelling
of Vader in the first place. Can we talk about just Vader's costume design? How fucking epic it is! And I know you mentioned it before, Robert, with the top of the helmet, but I mean everything else they do, like
the cape,
it fits in. The cape, the
mechanical breathing that's still going on even as he's talking, because it's actually machines down here forcing his lungs to pump oxygen, and you don't even think about that, but it's still like you don't notice it, but the back of your brain does. Especially when
it makes him scarier. It makes him scarier.
Which one is it?
At this, I forget. You don't know why. You don't know anything about him in this film.
Does Big Kenobi is it this one where Big Kenobi says he's more machine than man now, or is that Return of the Jedi?
When he says that, you don't know that now.
No, he doesn't know that.
What makes him
At
so
this
terrifying.
point, he just said that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like you find out that Obi-Wan says he was a pupil of mine. A young Jedi named Darth Vader, and you have that moment of, wait a minute, that thing's human? Like you're just you can't tell where the machine, that he's a machine until somebody.
You don't even know. Yeah, you don't even know what he is.
You're like, that thing's human.
Yeah.
You can't tell. You're just like, oh my gosh, what is that thing?
I'm pretty sure he's actually credited as Big Kenobi in this, but Alec Guinness the most veteran actor on the staff. Like he even more so than Peter Cushing. He was at one point the only one who thought the film was going to be a success. He was like, no, George, it's going to be fine. The kids will love it. But at the same time, like it did way better than even he thought it would. To the point where he kind of started to hate Star Wars, but he later in life he kind of came to terms with it.
He was in a lot of stuff beforehand.
Yeah, he was an Academy Award-winning actor. He won for Bridge on the River Kwai like 20 years earlier.
Yeah, he was a really good actor, and it's kind of a shame when you're only remembered for that one role. So,
but there's a lot of depth, and we'll get into this more when we talk about the prequels, but. I don't want answers now, but keep this in the back of your mind when we go into those. How much of the prequels did George Lucas already have planned by this point? Because you get a lot of, at least like what happened in Revenge of the Sith, in this movie.
Yeah.
With Alec Guinness's acting chops and stuff, and you really get kind of this gravitas when he says, "There's a people of mine before he turned to evil. Hunted down and betrayed your father."
He betrayed and murdered your father. Yeah.
Help the Empire betray. Yeah.
Because
help the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knight. He betrayed and murdered your father.
There you go. Yeah, that's the line. There you go. So yeah, I mean,
we do know that.
If there's one thing that was actually there's a couple things that were done well in the prequels, and we'll get into that. But one of the big ones is Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan overall as a character in. I think one of the reasons why it's so impressive that Ewan McGregor was so impressive as Obi-Wan was because of how much he had to live up to with Alec Guinness's
performance.
Well, Alec Guinness was like the entire reason why he got into acting in the first place. That was like his freaking hero.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. So, also Ewan McGregor.
That's one of the things I love about Ewan McGregor is that he's like just one of us, just a big nerd like us.
Yeah.
Also, funnily enough, Ewan McGregor in the news this week. Isn't
Trainspotting 2 like a TV show?
He left his wife because he got caught kissing a co-star. That's what happened this week. That's why Ewan McGregor's in the news this week. So yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. So otherwise, but still as an actor, pretty fucking great. I mean that's like every Hollywood person. Let's be honest.
So I mean, other actors like they got a stage actor to do C-3PO. They got which a lot of what went into the design was thanks to Ralph McQuarrie, who is the concept artist and who did all the matte paintings. He's the one who designed C-3PO's face to be kind of like this neutral but also expressive thing.
He does an amazing job as well. Like I never once thought there was somebody in that suit.
Yeah.
You think he's a robot.
And even more so with Kenny Baker as R2-D2, just because at least C-3PO you can kind of see you can kind of see how someone would fit in the gold and silver suit, but with R2-D2 he's like just a rolling trash can, and you're just like and because he just speaks and beeps and boops, you don't even think that like how did they do that? I mean, you think, oh wow, how did they do that? But the answer isn't something that easily pops in your mind because you're kind of caught in the moment. You're kind of just Star Wars is a movie that really appeals on the emotional level more than the logic level, and so you kind of just get swept into the movie. And it's not until later that you're just like, oh wow, how did they do that? Which is kind of, and again, I want to get more into this with Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I think one of the only things
it's the anti 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I think there's really only two things that really kind of broke my suspension of disbelief during the film. One of them is how if there's of all the effects that actually hold up well, the lightsaber fight really doesn't hold up at all. It's really bad. The effects
that is one thing that I wish that the special editions would just CGI over.
It's so bad.
Just the lightsabers themselves.
Just like holding their swords out like a couple of kids, like really, really, really bad. Especially when you look at all the the stuff they do later, even in this series, before they even get to the prequels.
Yeah, even episode 5.
The prequels all you want. The lightsaber fights in the prequels are fucking epic.
So
but
really,
they're even
really
better. They're better even later in this film series, in the first, in the original 3. And the other thing that ruined my suspension of disbelief is how the fuck do the Jawas drive those sand crawlers?
How did they get up to the steering wheel?
How the fuck does that work? There's no way that should work. But anyway, that's not really.
So
really
really unpopular opinion, and I've alluded to this in the past, but I personally think, at least from a writing level, Darth Vader versus Ben Kenobi is like a cinematic masterpiece.
Really?
From a writing perspective, yes.
I
From a writing
really love that.
No. The conversation that they're having fucking carries
think of the build up. This is a 2-hour long movie, and this fight happens like an hour 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
Earlier than that.
No,
it's probably about an hour 20. It's about an hour 20. Yeah, it's about an hour
20. Because it comes out like pretty close to the end of the second act when they're in the Death Star. Yeah. Which is another thing that this movie has going for structure. First, third Tatooine, second, third Death Star, third Yavin, and the Death Star trench run. And so you get this build-up. You get like Darth Vader, the man who walks amongst the corpses without a weapon. You don't even see his weapon or even know what it is until, like in the back of your mind, you know what it is when Ben Kenobi is introducing Luke Skywalker to the lightsaber. Because it's a Jedi's weapon. Your father was a Jedi Knight. Vader was a Jedi Knight. Don't put 2 and 2 together right now because it's not Empire Strikes Back yet.
Well, also because the whole Darth Vader was Luke's father thing was But yes.
And get this. You get that scene we talked about earlier where Vader's like, I sense a presence that I have not felt. He walks off. Ben Kenobi's on his own, like, disabling the tractor beam. Then he makes this turn down the hallway. Then he, like, stops and pulls out his lightsaber and keeps walking down. And then there's Darth Vader ready to go down. It's like, when I met you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
I am the master.
Well, the master of evil, Darth. And like just their banter and stuff, like, you strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
No, the dialogue is great, but the fighting is garbage.
Yeah,
I mean, it is basically just 2 old men poking each other with glowy sticks.
It is a whole lot of,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, that kind of takes away from the rest of the scene for me at this point. Whereas the rest of the effects, like, are still good enough that it's fine. Like that, they could have fixed with just choreographing it fucking better.
Well, yeah, and there's this one part that always bugged me, even as a kid, where Ben Kenobi's like doing this, like, and you can, and the light's not, and the light is not hitting the aluminum right, and so it looks like his lightsaber's going out, like it's sparking. It looks like it's sparking stuff. I was just like, I remember as a kid thinking that, like
just move the camera.
I remember thinking as a kid, like, watching it over and over again, thinking, "Oh my God, his lightsaber's breaking," but then I found out that it was just a technical slip up. And
no, here's the worst part, and I'm not even good at finding out these things. The first time I watched the film, I watched the first Star Wars films before I watched the prequels, because that's why I was excited for the prequels, because my dad introduced me to Star Wars when I was really young. Okay, so the thing is, though, and I remember this very distinctly. The first time I watched the film, I remember when Kenobi's lightsaber is kind of pointing at you, you can see that it's fake. And I didn't even think it was something else. Like, that's fake. I was like, fuck, that sucks. Well, I didn't think fuck when I was that young, but I was like, it's fake. That's gross. Like, I didn't like that. Yeah. So that's bad. Like, that was dumb. They could have fixed that. They could have just angle of the camera. It's not that hard.
Yeah, they made the
they do so many other things well in terms of effects and settings and all this other stuff, and then they fuck that up. Like,
they gave the lightsabers a lot more weight in Empire Strikes Back. I think they actually made the actual lightsabers heavier for the actors.
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did.
Especially in Return of the Jedi, like, Luke's swinging that thing around wildly, and it looks like it weighs 20 pounds.
It does. It looks like it weighs a lot. And then that's the thing. Well, that's the lore, is that all the weight is in the handle.
Yeah.
All the weight's in the handle. There's no weight in the actual beam. All the weight's in the handle. So.
Let's see.
There's other weird little things about lightsabers, too. What's the thing? Like, they can't actually slide. So as soon as they hit each other, they're stuck. They can't slide down. That's why they don't have hand guards. Because you can't do an actual sword fighting. Because spoiler alert, I'm such a nerd. I actually watched some HEMA channels and stuff like that. Scalagram, shout out to Scalagram, that guy's awesome. If you actually have a real sword fight, the sword can slide down, so they have to have a cross guard. But in lightsabers, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, technically, as soon as they hit, they can't slide. So that's an interesting thing. I don't know if they actually. It was hard to tell if they actually kept that consistent in this film, but it's something they definitely keep consistent. At least since 1999, I think they do it in the other ones as well, though, in 5 and 6. So,
but yeah.
So what do we want to get into now?
Well, if we still talking about casting, we never talked about Mark Hamill.
Yeah, there's not really much to talk about at this point because he really hadn't done anything yet, and
yeah,
I think we'll save the really big Mark Hamill rant for Return of the Jedi, which is when he really came into his own.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say one thing that
he was good as Luke in this, but yeah, he was a lot. Yeah, he did Return of the Jedi was definitely probably one of his better performances.
I think
his true calling was always voice acting.
I think I think Mark Hamill's performance in Return of the Jedi is one of the biggest reasons why I think it's still my favorite of the first 3, even though I know it's not the best movie. But I think Mark Hamill's performance had a really big, I mean,
it's one of my favorites. I'll save it for the Return of the Jedi.
But I want to say, in terms of this film, people love to make fun of Mark Hamill's performance as Luke in this film, and after watching, it's I don't really get
it. You try freaking speaking George Lucas's dialogue.
Yeah, first of all, you tried George
Lucas. Episode 1, by the way, that's something even with episode 1 that I've thought about with you tried making now this is pod racing sound good. Now doing it when you're 9. I feel so sorry for Chris
Jake Lloyd.
Yeah, Jake Lloyd and Hayden Christensen.
I feel so sorry for that kid. That was not his fault. But
I mean, if you want to watch the best video on the prequels ever made, in my opinion, I think it's one of Nostalgia Critic's finest moments is his prequels video.
Oh yeah, the top 11 coolest.
The top 11 coolest things about the prequels. That and his Avatar: The Last Airbender versus The Last Airbender video. That might be his crowning moment.
Yeah. But you try making some of these lines sound good.
Yeah, no, and yeah, what's the But I was gonna go in the charge station to buy some pick up some power converters. But honestly, besides that line, that's the only line on it. In my opinion, that's the whiniest line. And other than that one, I actually think his performance was a lot more subtle than people like to joke around about. To be perfectly honest, I didn't think. I actually thought it was pretty good. It was pretty believable. What do you think he's supposed to be? What he's an older teenager. He wants to get the fuck out of there. You get it. He's acting.
He's embodying the entire generation.
Yeah,
and honestly, I think he's doing it
back by their parents and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's not as insufferable as you would have expected. I didn't find him annoying at all. I don't know why people
Yeah, and I mean, the most beautiful moment in this movie, and one that even people who hate what Star Wars made Hollywood into say the moment of clarity in this movie, the most artistic statement this movie does, is just Mark Hamill staring at 2 suns setting.
Yep.
To John Williams' breathtaking score. John Williams has made some awesome scores for some incredible movies, but Star Wars takes the cake time and time again. Whether it's the opening theme, the Imperial March, the haunting music that plays during the final parts of Return of the Jedi, the song that plays during the Twin Sun scene, the Castle Run, the dun 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 dun. The Duel of and with the prequel Duel of Fates, the Hero Fall or Battle of Heroes. Yeah. Just John Williams.
There's a reason why there's a line in epic battles that's says half of your millions should go to John
Yeah,
Williams.
it's Steven Spielberg used John Williams a
Yeah.
lot. Steven Spielberg is who introduced John Williams and George Lucas because John
There's
Williams
a
worked
reason
on
why
Jaws.
that line exists in that rap battle.
Because John Williams is that good.
Because he is that good. And I mean,
yeah, killed it.
Also, the Hedwig theme. Can we just talk about that from the Harry Potter film?
Like,
that one song did. I honestly believe that about $100 million of at least $100 million or more of J.K. Rowling's net worth is due to that theme song.
And one of my coworkers is always whistling that thing. So
it was so good that it wasn't actually supposed to be the original Harry Potter theme song. It was Hedwig. That's all it was. It was just Hedwig's theme, and then it became Harry Potter. It's everywhere now, and it's that good. Like,
well, you want to know what I wake up to every morning?
Oh boy!
3, 2, 1.
Timing.
Now my volume was all the way down.
Oh. Drum roll, please.
Yeah. Yes.
That was actually a pretty good version
the famous Superman theme. That is maybe, who knows? Like if they were to put that in Man of Steel and
somebody did an edit. Somebody did an edit of the. Yeah, I saw someone do an edit of the scene where Superman first takes off in that movie, and they play John Williams' theme instead of Hans Zimmer's, or whoever did the score for that movie.
And I like Hans Zimmer a lot. He's
I used it like he used to be so much better.
Yeah, no,
he used to be so much better.
Later, not.
I honestly think that the best thing he's done recently was discombobulate from the Sherlock. The Sherlock Holmes soundtracks actually add a lot to those because he does. They're a bit steampunky, and even the soundtracks are a little bit steampunky. So I appreciate those. But otherwise,
John Williams still holds up to this day. He's still
100%.
The best movie soundtrack writer ever, in my opinion.
I used to be a Hans Zimmer fan, and I got to give it to John Williams. I got to give it to John Williams at this point. John Williams for sure.
Yeah, his work still.
The Star Wars theme alone, like hearing that again, like the first time it was actually done, like that was very powerful. That's such an. I still think that's actually probably the best theme of all time is the Star Wars theme. I don't think anything's better. I mean, and what's his name does some pretty good ones too. The guy that's always working with the guy who did Simpsons and why am I forgetting his name? Fuck. He works with the guy who dated Helena Bonham Carter.
Tim Burton. Danny Elfman. Danny
Elfman's done some.
Who did the Batman soundtrack? Which was used in the 1989 movie, 1992 movie, and also the animated series. That was Danny Elfman.
Yeah, that's Danny Elfman. The Simpsons.
He also did Spider-Man, and he does like every other Tim Burton movie.
Yeah,
the This Is Halloween, the Halloween Town theme.
He wrote that. That was actually. I don't know if it's just his singing voice, but I think he actually plays Jack Skellington. If he does it, he does the singing voice. I know he does the singing voice.
He does the singing voice for Jack Skellington. Yeah, he does the singing voice for Jack Skellington for sure. Yeah. No, that theme is one of my all-time favorite theme songs ever too. Boys and girls of every age. Okay, anyways, but yeah, I still think even with all that. I still think that. Oh yeah, very topical. It's almost I still think that the John Williams Star Wars theme is one of the best. Is the best theme song of all time.
It's really good. Yeah,
it's amazing. I'm not, I am technically a semi-professional musician. I did do a lot of music classes and take a lot of music lessons and do a lot of formal music study. But I'm actually not very good overall at analyzing film and music together that well. It's only like in certain places where I really notice it. So I'm not gonna be able to. I can't speak to like every.
The trick to movie scores, and this is something that John Williams sometimes kind of falters at, is that when you're writing a film score, you're writing something to complement the movie. Yeah. Most film score is not meant to be listened to on its own. And John Williams, he kind of tends to falter at that because he tends to make a lot of scores that are just like bombast that you would listen to without the movie.
Yeah, this is true.
Especially with stuff like Superman and Indiana Jones. But you know, he does a lot of really great Star Wars scores too, like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, War of the Worlds, some other parts in Star Wars.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List specifically. That was an amazing, subtle film score.
That's what I like about Lord of the Rings soundtrack, is because other than the really big, like, Opus song, I can't, like, whistle anything Lord of the Rings, but I can't imagine the movie without every piece of music being exactly the way it is.
No, that's true. That one is also extremely well done, I have to say. What's next on the chopping block then?
Sorry.
Media's he's steering this ship. Right. He's using he's got his
let's see
his targeting computer switched off, and he's to guide us.
Yeah, we've kind of jumped around a bit.
Yeah, of course.
But the next on the chopping block, I got the Hero's Call, which is a very important part of Joseph Campbell's kind of observations. And you get really good example of that in one of the like less talked about darker moments of the series, which is the ultimate fate of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Yeah.
That kind of like freaked me out as a kid. Like that was one of the things that like legitimately like creeped me out. Like was that the entirety of Tales from the Crypt. Even though like I look back at Tales from the Crypt now and just kind of laugh because I can do that same exact line like and I'm gonna sound like a bitch. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The scene where she's running through the forest freaked me the f*** out.
Yeah,
as a kid, that gave me legit nightmares. Like I would not sleep in my room alone after that.
No, that was a powerful scene. No, I mean that's a fucking great movie. Okay, like if we're I'm sure we're gonna have to do some Disney podcasts eventually.
Yeah, if we do Disney, I chop it up into different eras. We can cover different eras of Disney
so too. But you know, after we're done doing Disney Star Wars, we'll do some other Disney shit. But I mean,
Infinity War comes out next year. We'll have to do Marvel stuff.
Oh yeah, dude. That one I'm really interested in to see how the fuck they're gonna pull it off, because there are I've never seen an ensemble cast like that. It's ridiculous.
Me neither.
Everybody. How are Chris Pratt and RDJ gonna be? Apparently, the rumors all that like they fucking played off each other like masters. And I really
they're gonna talk up the movie a lot.
Yeah, I mean, those two are both fucking amazing. Spoiler alert: like Chris Pratt is my man crush. He's fucking amazing because I got into him during Parks and Rec. So, like seeing everything afterwards, like oh my god! And I love Guardians of the Galaxy and all that shit. So I'm really excited for that.
Chris Evans is my favorite out of that cast, just because he was so perfect as. Like probably my all-time favorite superhero, Captain America. Like I hated him up until that point. When I found out he was Captain America, I was pissed. And then when I actually saw the movie, I was like, "Oh my god, he's like perfect." Like I cannot dream up a better first Captain America movie.
No, I think a big reason. I mean, we're trailing off into Marvel again, which we're gonna have to talk about. That's going to have to be a podcast later, but I think a big part of it is how well cast the characters are. I mean, RDJ, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, all the Chris's, and actually the most and Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo in the first Avengers movie fucking stole the show.
He was fantastic, yeah.
Even the second one, he was quite good too. Even though the whole him and Black Widow thing was like a little bit forced.
That was Joss Whedon kind of funneling his own experience with Scarlett Johansson into the Hulk.
but I mean, either way, Mark Ruffalo fucking amazing as the Hulk. Chris Pratt as.
But back to Star Wars.
Right.
I really like how surprisingly slow burn this movie is. And this is why, like, even though it's Star Wars, one of the greatest and most important films ever made, I'm always a little scared that I'm going to oversell it.
Yeah.
Because it actually does take so long to really get started, and even when it does get started, it's so small scale.
It is.
Like, it's relatively low budget for the kind of movie it is. But at the same time, movies like that didn't get that kind of budget. Like, again, I talked about this in Top 10 Tuesday, like, the fact that, wasn't it Paramount? That did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? The fact that they were the only ones who were, like, willing to put up that kind of money for those kind of movies. And same thing goes with Fox with Star Wars, and movies like Star Wars did not get the budget like movies like recent Star Wars. They were not. They did not have these
budgets like movies like Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just...
Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, like, and Star Wars kind of set the precedent on that. In that it became the most successful movie of all time, and so the studios, not just Fox, but every single other movie studio around at that time, were like, hey, I could throw billions of dollars at this movie and make my money back, no problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work. Even if the movie's good. Look at Blade Runner.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Blade Runner did make its money back. It just wasn't like the kind of box office smash that the studio was hoping for it to be.
Yeah.
It did better than 2049, thank God.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's in that way. I think that makes it a better film, though, because I love the way Luke, his character is set up. They actually do take the time to have him. They do set the precedent of, he doesn't really actually want to be there. He has a reason, but he's not quite committed yet, and then he meets Kenobi, but he's still not actually committed. They actually do a good job with all of that, and it's not just, let's go. Like, I like that. Yeah. Technically, that makes it a better film, I think. Yeah. Even if it does make it a bit slower.
And the thing is, it's not just that he wants to leave Tatooine. He wants to be free. And freedom does not mean joining a rebel army.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, freedom comes at a very, very steep price for Luke because it comes at the cost of his family. And, it's a very, in the sense of, what we talk about in, the literary device of an inciting incident, it's meant to be this earth-shattering this earth-shattering meteor crashing to the world and changing everything that that the characters have known and throwing their entire world out of control. And where we really see that is with Owen and Beru's death, because it's that, like you said, it's that just horrifying moment where you see the skeletons and you're like, oh, wow. Like that, I agree. Like, that terrified me as a child. Yeah, it's just that frightening moment that just...
It is very frightening.
Sets everything into motion, and it's definitely that moment for Luca. You wanted to be free. You're free now, but you're not going to be happy with it. And in a way, he's not really free because now he's got, now he knows that he has to do something about this to keep this from happening to others. But
and I think another thing that they did well is that, plus the scene where they're like the Jawa, that is coupled with the scene where the Sandcrawler too. Like, why the fuck would they bother killing the Jawas? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it shows the brutality of the Empire. But that said, another little small criticism is the whole only Imperial stormtroopers are this precise.
He's old and senile, and he's just thinking back to the Clone Wars, back when the clones were actually good shots.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I'll give credit to. Another thing I'll give credit to the TV show. The clones were fucking good shots, at least. God damn it. Like, they at least did that right.
And of course, there's the theory that, at least in A New Hope, they were purposely bad shots
that they, like Leia said, that they let them go on purpose and that they
because that's how they found the rebel base for the third act. Was tracking the Millennium Falcon.
That's another thing that I love that they just that one line. I mean, just that little interaction.
It's Murphy's Law. It's how you make an adventure story script.
Yeah, because I was questioning it before that line because it's been a long time since I've seen the movie and I forgot about that. And it's also because I'm dumb, so I forgot about that. That was part of it. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Like if he didn't say that, I would have been like, what the fuck? Because it is a little bit like it was a little bit too easy for them to escape, and so it's like, so I mean that makes sense. Like I do think because it's a huge space station, which I mean you can kind of see how they can get lost in it a little bit, but when they have the attention of Vader and fucking what's his name? Tarkin, yeah, sorry. I forgot that.
He's too ruthlessly efficient.
They have enough people on there that they could just bring fucking everybody over there and yeah. So
also, these stormtroopers are firing down these long, straight hallways with almost no cover. How did they not hit them? They let them go. Yeah. So yeah, in this case it was.
Yeah. But I mean, looking at, going back to the Murphy's Law aspect. I mean, think about like after that inciting incident, they have trouble bargaining with Han Solo to get the Millennium Falcon. Luke ends up having to sell his land speeder. Then they get discovered by the stormtroopers and have to blast their way out. They set a course for Alderaan, but oops, Grand Moff Tarkin done blew that up. So now they're in the middle of an asteroid belt being pulled into the Death Star.
Yeah.
And can't escape, so now they have to split up. And take cover, like Luke and Han have to disguise themselves as stormtroopers. C-3PO and R2 have to like just chill out in this little command room or whatever. And Chewie has to dress up as their prisoner. Meanwhile, Ben Kenobi is going around trying to disable the tractor field so that they can get out of Dodge. And then they end up discovering the princess. And then Luke Skywalker's like, I'm going to save the princess. And Han's like, oh, this kid's really going to try saving the princess. And then they do that. They end up in that hallway shootout that leads them into the garbage disposal with the squid.
At least there's cover in that scene, thank God.
Yeah, which leads them into the garbage disposal with the squid, and then they have to freaking deal with that. And C-3PO.
Can I point out another little small complaint is what the fuck's the point of the squid?
It's just another friggin'. It's just another feather. It's just another.
It doesn't make sense that it exists when like they're all standing up in the water.
Yeah,
I just point that out. Also, another problem I have with that scene that I pointed at that I wrote down. A trash compactor, like it wouldn't have crushed them likely because they likely could have been able to get on top of everything because with everything that was actually there when like it was completely wide, a trash compactor is not.
I didn't know that.
Basic physics, you can't make things go away by crushing them. They're still gonna be there, okay? They'll get smaller, but there still should be enough room for them to climb on top.
Well, maybe they did
how much stuff was actually there.
Well, maybe they did kind of address that when Han said, one thing's for sure, we're all going to be a lot thinner. Like,
yeah, maybe they were.
Maybe it will kill us, but it's not.
It's just another like short, independent scene of tension, and we get that 3PO. God damn it!
Yeah, that was.
Pick up the phone, you fuck.
So something I kind of wanted to say.
Where could he be? Where could he be? That's the line. That's always the line. Where could he be?
I kind of wanted to talk about a little.
You shut up and listen to me.
Yeah. Something I kind of wanted to talk about a little earlier, just about the droids, is that, I don't know. Something that I've always kind of felt, one little gripe that I've had with this movie and like the prequels in general, is kind of with 3PO, because at the beginning of the movie, he's there to kind of talk for R2 and stuff like that and translate for him and help us know what's going on and stuff like that. But when he's not doing that, he honestly kind of feels like he's Jar Jarring before Jar Jar and stuff like that.
Yeah, he kind of is.
People, but it does feel like he was just there to
that's just George Lucas' sense of humor, though.
Yeah. The problem is that George Lucas' sense of humor is not very good.
Yeah,
I think that's what I've learned.
I think his sense of humor is good. It's just he's not funny.
Yeah.
He's just not funny because
Because he knows a good joke when he hears it. Like he'll laugh and stuff, and he's always in good like attitude about things. Like even when people were hating on the prequels and stuff, he's just like, "Oh, what can I do? It's for kids."
Yeah, so that was something I kind of felt sometimes with 3PO, and also like because R2 did originally have his own talk in his own lines and stuff like that, but they decided to just replace his lines with a bunch of beeps and stuff like that. So 3PO had to translate for him, and so I don't know. I guess 3PO wasn't necessarily like evil per se, but I did kind of feel like I don't know. In scenes like that,
I agree with you. He is a bit Jar Jar before Jar Jar. I actually think the funny thing is that they don't get the comic relief character right in Star Wars until Chopper, and Chopper is actually like the funniest of all the droids in my opinion. Which is kind of funny because it took Dave Filoni to do it instead of Lucas. That's the first property that has that really had nothing to do. And actually no, sorry, it's not Chopper. Chopper was funny, but the funniest one is the one from Rogue One.
K2SO.
K2SO is by far the funniest comic relief character they've ever had.
That's because he was voiced by
Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he's also really great.
So it took until No Luke until a Star Wars film was actually funny. Yeah. That's the truth. That's when it was fun. Because the funniest line in the first 3 films, in my opinion, is Han's "I know." That's always the most amusing part of the first 3 films, in my opinion, and that was an ad lib by Harrison Ford being fucking awesome. That's the most Harrison Ford line ever. Somebody that you're having an affair with, also, by the way, tells you, or had an affair with, so I forget what the timeline was, says, "I love you," and your response is, "I know." Fucking badass.
I did also, another funnier, speaking of Harrison Ford ad-libbing, he completely ad-libbed that line where, he's on where, like, they shoot up the prison cell, and then he tries to, hold the guys off and talk them out of it, where he hops on. Hello, we had a weapon malfunction, very dangerous. Like, that was all.
And apparently he had some experience with stuff like that. As a carpenter.
Boring conversation.
Yeah.
Boring conversation anyway. Look, we're gonna have company. Yeah, no, that's good. And that one was kind of fun. So yeah, I could see that being another ad lib from Harrison Ford, just being funny.
Yeah, like that whole thing was just an ad lib because he wanted himself and like unprepared and stuff like that, and he did it perfectly because he sounded very nervous and like out of control. So yeah.
I mean, as we know, Lucas, it's true. His dialogue is just the worst dialogue. It's so amazing how bad
it's his weak spot as a writer.
It's definitely his weak spot. Yeah, we all have them, and writing dialogue is not George Lucas's strong point. So yeah.
I think Media's Doggo could write some better dialogue scenes than that.
You think so?
He could.
I mean, we know. The sand scene. We all know the sand, which we're gonna have to talk about in a few episodes.
Oh god, that's
there's other bad ones too. It's not the only one. The power converters. That's mostly his fault too. There's.
Yeah, it was pretty. We'll talk about that one later. But so and we kind of touched on this earlier, but so they get Leia, and we talk about kind of how, or just looking at your itinerary here, Media, talk about like a strong female character, and Leia was really good at this, but like, she starts out needing to be saved, but then she ends up saving the guys and kind of being this, person who basically wants to just shoot their way.
She's a princess, but she's, the way politics work in Star Wars is kind of odd. Weird. Like, they vote for their kings and queens. Yeah. And so Leia's more like a senator, and in terms of like what her actual like authority is in the Empire, she's more of a senator.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I want to point out also to her credit is that the reason she needed saving was because she was being a badass in the first place. Because she showed up to the Battle of Scarif, as we know. Like that's why she was there. That's why it was happening in the first fucking place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? So like, she needed rescuing because she was being brave in the first place. So that's also some credit to her. And Carrie Fisher does a good job of being like a badass without it like overly trying to smack you in the face like some films do, of like trying to be girl power. Like, you just respect her.
She just is.
Yeah, she just is. You respect her, and you don't have to like. Doesn't feel like they're trying to do that. She just does awesome. She's just a badass.
Yeah, she tries freaking talk. She tries smarting after Darth Vader, and he's like, "Don't act like you were on any mercy missions. I know that you had the plans."
Yeah, and I do like that because I do think kind of what we were talking about earlier. Again, she has that disappearing British accent. She tries to be all nice and pleasant for Darth Vader and Tarkin and stuff like that.
I mean, it really sounds like a conversation between a daughter.
Yeah,
she was out,
which is not because neither one of them knows that. Yeah,
I know, that's why it's funny. That's the terrible joke I just made. Okay.
Yeah, come on, and media. Then when Luke and Han are catching her or saving her, that's when she just goes full on sass. She just starts sassing everyone, and
can actually
that's who she really is. So like.
And I do want to point out. I do also want to point out I really did enjoy. I do like the dynamic between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford. Like, I get because I never really cared about their relationship in the first few times I watched the film, but like I actually got it this time, and I actually really enjoyed the way they sniped at each other and the way like how
the way they straight back and forth. They're two people equals.
Yeah, like you do feel like that Luke, that how happy she was that he came back and all that stuff, and it's actually, when you think about how much happens, it's actually not that long of a film, and they actually do a good job of establishing the characters and conveying what happens and how they grow as characters for the most part in the film. Yeah, especially Han.
How they come to respect each other.
Yeah, I mean, and like Luke doesn't end up saving the day on his own. He's got Wedge, he's got the other rebel fighters, and it's Han Solo's the one who has to take out Darth Vader's wingman to save the day.
Literally, this is what I googled the second the film ended. That Y-wing pilot who survived the Battle of Yavin. and the best part about it is Google actually autofilled it for me too. Like as soon as that Y-wing pilot and it's like that as soon as I wrote what did I type? I'm gonna type it again.
And what Wedge Antilles played by Ewan McGregor's uncle.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, so that's what I typed in. I typed in that one Y-wing, and then it literally autocorrected to pilot who survived the Battle of Yavin. And his name is Kayan Farlander, and in the extended universe, he actually becomes a Jedi Knight. Interestingly. But that's in the extended universe.
God, everybody became Jedi Knights in the extended universe.
Again, as a lot of people will hate me for saying, and it's a lot of those. Well, actually, it's a lot of those old school stick in the mud, baby boomer Star Wars fans that like to pretend the Star Wars prequels don't exist. Fuck you. Okay, first of all, even if they were as bad as you think they are, which they're bad, but there's a lot of good things about them. But even if they were as god awful as you think they are, and I'm assuming because you're a stick in the mud baby boomer, you think that Hillary Clinton is literally Satan, and I kind of agree with you. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that the Star Wars prequels are as bad as Hillary Clinton, which I don't think they are. Actually, I think she and Donald Trump are worse than the Star Wars prequels. But let's just say they are. They still exist. You can't argue with canon. Whoever controls it is what.
Especially since a lot of
I hate those people. I hate those people.
I wanted to save this for Phantom Menace, but here's a little taste of one of my bullet points is going to be for that podcast. A lot of the confusion problems. Maybe I'll save it for Attack of the Clones to give more to talk about during that podcast. A lot of the confusion problems with the way things are portrayed in the prequels is because of the extended universe and trying to keep that canon.
Yeah,
keep all of it canon. Ended up making them write themselves to like 5 different corners at once, especially with the Jedi. Lindsay Ellis has a really great mini canon episode on the Jedi Order, where she talks about the different interpretations of the Jedi throughout the movies, and especially the EU, and how the EU kind of fucked everything up for the Jedi Order in the prequels.
And okay, so so my point is, so I know a lot of those people are gonna, be upset at us when we review the prequels, and they're stupid. And not that the prequels are great, but you can have your opinion. But like the people that literally think the Star Wars prequels don't exist and Star Wars is only the first 3, you are a fucking idiot. You're just fucking stupid. But the other people that are going to be mad is the people that when I say I actually am so happy that Disney destroyed the extended universe. I think that was. I know it's
we'll save that for the Force Awakens.
Probably a money move too, but I actually agree entirely because the extended universe was dog shit. Some of it was great, but most of it was dog shit.
They kept the good stuff.
Reading up on the Yuuzhan Vong crisis thing, oh my god, that was retarded. That is bad fan fiction levels of bullshit. Oh my god, it was so stupid.
And as somebody who has written some bad fan fiction, I know.
Same. That is E.L. James level of bad fan fiction. It's that bad, honestly.
I don't know.
The Yuuzhan Vong specifically, not all these things. The Yuuzhan Vong thing specifically is that level of bad fan fiction. I'm just talking about that alone. And also they've actually done some good things where it's like one of the best things about the extended universe was the Thrawn series, was the whole Thrawn thing. Well, he's in the
he's in Rebels.
He's in Star Wars.
Fucking amazing in Rebels. And also they got the same guy who wrote the original Thrawn books.
Yeah, Timothy Zahn.
They got the same guy to do it. So what are you complaining about? Same writer. So I mean, that's the best part of the extended universe.
We'll talk. We'll talk a little deeper in that when we get into the Force Awakens, because that's a big part of what made the Force Awakens what it ended up being.
Yeah. So I don't know what else.
What else do we have to talk about? This is just a minor point with the way the dog fights are in this movie especially. They took stock footage of World War II dogfights,
really,
and actually copied the camera angles and stuff from that to do a lot of the dogfight scenes.
I mean, that's cool because, like I said, it still held up. Yeah, like it's.
And that's kind of what inspired the TIE fighter sound. Yeah. The noise that TIE fighters make when they fly by is the Stuka dive bombers from Germany.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Which is cool. I love the TIE fighter sound. I love the TIE fighter sound.
I love the Death Star as a concept. I think it's a little overdone at this point. I hope that Last Jedi and whatever Episode 9 ends up being doesn't just rehash the Death Star again. Yeah. But as a concept for that movie, it is kind of brilliant because it is both the Forbidden Fortress and the giant monster. It's like if Polyphemus from Odyssey was also the city of Troy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty awesome. I agree. It's quite
and it's a planet buster
fortress that you think, how did these guys get out of here? How did they destroy it? And also it can blow up planets. Like, yeah.
Which is a level of destruction we had not seen in, I don't think, any movie ever. Yep. I don't even think like Doctor Who or Star Trek got into like planet busting stuff until after that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, like all the laser firing stuff was done in cell animation.
Something else to be said about the Death Star is that when you look at a fortress, you look at it, you see like how horrifying it is, and in a way, it kind of speaks for the evil empire that it's being used by, or the people that are in charge of it. And that was that's like a really good thing here with the Death Star.
Yeah, a lot of the Empire stuff is like really smooth, really circular based, whereas a lot of the Rebel stuff is much more like jagged and like polygonal.
Yeah, and it just speaks more of like Tarkin and Darth Vader, these men who are willing to use something this horrifying, and also he was originally written to just be like kind of a absentee figurehead, but also it builds up the Emperor and what he would eventually become this horrifying villain. That was something my dad talked about when he first started watching this, that like seeing Darth Vader and the Death Star, to a lesser extent Tarkin, like really made him wonder about the Emperor and the kind of man that he was. So.
They build up the Emperor so well in this trilogy.
They do, and the payoff is actually
with, like, the amount of time he has in the 6th movie, even though it's like so brief, he's still this horrifying.
I am the Senate.
Yeah, exactly. He's still this.
He does. I mean, the fact that they got him both. Ian McDiarmid. The fact that they got him for both times, I think, is awesome. I think that really helped.
He did a really good job.
And he knocks out the
better parts of the prequels. Yeah, the Emperor is. Like, even before he shows up, you feel his presence, and you are terrified of this.
I quote the Emperor from Return of the Jedi, so many times just casually, like, I'm afraid the deflector shields will be quite operational when your friends arrive.
He's
and your faith in your friends is yours.
I think he's another reason why I love episode 6 so much. I think that's another reason why I put that one up so high. He's like,
I made like a 10-minute long video about like not that scene specifically, but that's what I focused on the most. But kind of like the scenes like it throughout the Star Wars saga, building up to that moment. And yeah, I paid a lot of lip service to just how excellent Ian McDiarmid is in these movies. But that's Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, he's great in that too. And I mean, I think Tarkin is kind of like almost like not the equivalent, but he's sort of the
proto Emperor.
He's the proto Emperor, and he does still do a great job. So I mean, like I said, I love Tarkin and his performance in this. Pretty great.
And he is so Tarkin is so confident. Like the reason why he dies is because he's just like, there's no way they could win.
Yeah.
I'm gonna blow up Yavin 4, and this will be a great day of victory for the Empire. We just saw the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and now we shall see the death of the Rebel Alliance as well.
Well, that was
he says something like that.
But he says, evacuate in our moment of triumph. Yeah, hubris cometh. Yeah, pride cometh before the fall, but he has so much right to be prideful. Yeah, he was brilliant.
That's another kudos to the TV show Clone Wars, is how awesome they do with setting up younger Tarkin.
Yeah, Tarkin.
That's one of the best arcs they did in that show was young Tarkin. And again, it's because they actually nailed it pretty well, and it's because they had so much to live up to with the original Tarkin. So it's actually impressive that they're able to do it so well.
Peter Cushing, his work cannot be understated. He was
agreed.
Yeah. Other than that, I think that kind of wraps up.
Yeah.
Oh, the destruction of the Death Star, and I just want to point this out. The graphic that they use for the Death Star plans is one of the first uses of computer animation in film history. That scene was completely constructed on a computer using CGI animation, and that's why it looks off model from what the Death Star ended up being, because it took them like a month to render it, and by then the Death Star went through design changes, and by the time they actually had the scene shot and stuff, they're like, it's way too late to go back and change this. We're just gonna keep it looking like a Pokeball.
Yeah.
I choose you.
Nobody will care.
Yeah. And on the subject of the destruction of the Death Star, something you talked about earlier, kind of with the Murphy's Law of the show, everything that happened with these characters, everything that could go wrong went wrong. They escaped from the Death Star only because the Empire left them. And this final sequence of them flying down this canyon trying to destroy this Death Star, the intensity and the suspense.
This movie is way more concerned with emotion than logic.
Yeah, and it was very much a Yeah, and it was such a suspenseful moment. I kind of had this conversation with Rogue One. That last minute is one of the most is like an incredibly suspenseful moment, and it's like I think in a way they were probably trying to capture the suspense of this movie here because everything that had happened, the Empire was completely in control. Everything that happened was because the Empire allowed it to happen, essentially for the most part. And so
the fact that they missed like the first time that they finally get a shot off, and every other time they've tried to get a shot off, Darth Vader's picked them off.
Yeah.
Well, no, they've gotten one shot off before, and it missed. It just grazed the surface. And yeah, so it's just those moments where like Luke is in Darth Vader's sights, he gets shot, and then Luke fires, and like that moment of Luke's like gasp of relief, like I think like the entire audience feels the same way. We have that.
And like I mean the way that scene is constructed, like
really well done.
Like you got the more like big flyby shots of the Death Star, and you got the turrets firing at them, and then again, like logically, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why didn't they just dive bomb the exhaust port? Why did they have to go through the canyon?
I think it was like
it doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah, and it
ramps up the intensity by like 11 because you're in this narrow corridor with your two wingmen getting closer and closer. The turrets are firing, and then they stop. You're like, why did they stop? And then you see Darth Vader's TIE fighter coming in behind them with his two wingmen, and he's picking them off. And again, like it misses the first time. And by the way, like two things. And I'll probably say this again when we get into Rogue One, since that is so much of what Rogue One was about. Something that size needs an exhaust port.
Yeah.
College Shooter did a video about that a few years ago. Like, hey, do you want to know what would happen if we didn't have that exhaust port?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Dorkly. This was literally impossible. An exhaust port pushes air out. There is no way they should have been able to make this shot. This was literally
going down miles with the proton torpedo because they even say it was ray shielded, which in the Star Wars lore that means like regular energy weapons wouldn't get past it.
Yeah,
they just get blocked anyway.
Or
like ray shields is what
whatever that means.
Yeah, ray shields is what blocked off like Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul and the Duel of Fate stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
another thing
but despite all what logic would dictate, this was still a really like just intense scene that
and it all built up to just letting go with the flow, let the Force handle it.
Take a step back, relax.
Let the Force handle it, man.
Use the Force, trust me.
Right, right, Scoob? Yes, I can't do a hippie without thinking Shaggy.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Like run, Scoob. God, dude, what's your Scooby? Scooby-Doo, where are you? So fucking good. That's also a pretty decent theme song. But I also loved. I know people complain about this because one of my favorite shows right now is The Expanse, which is a sci-fi show right now, which I actually really, really enjoy. I think it's pretty good. And they're very concerned with being they're trying to be pretty scientifically accurate with what's going on in that show. So like when Martians come to Earth, humans that live on Mars come to Earth, they cannot handle the gravity well. When the people that live in lower gravity in the belt between in the asteroid belt, they have brittle bones and they're skinnier, and it's like so they try to do all that. The ships fly differently too, and so I know that Star Wars, the way Star Wars ships fly and shoot and are designed is not the way that it would happen at all, but I don't care because the designs are cool looking.
Yeah.
I really don't give a fuck.
What knowledge he had, let's be honest. He had never been up to space and stuff like that, so yeah, he was working with...
we had only been up to space like once.
Yeah, it doesn't... more than that.
Yeah, a couple times.
Because technically the Russians got to space first, then we got into space, then we went to the moon, and then we went to the moon again, and then we went to the moon again, and then nobody else went to the moon. But now the flags are white, so now it looks like the French went there, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, exactly. So George Lucas was working with what knowledge of space and
That was a
stuff like
good one.
that he had. So, yeah.
But yeah, I love the designs. Basically, what I'm saying is I think everything they design actually looks really cool. Like, and actually, my favorite design, and it's true, like it stays with the themes of like the way the Imperial stuff looks. With, I love the Corellian Corvette. Corellian Corvette is so fucking cool.
The Tantive 4.
Yeah, Tantive 4,
5e.
like
Tangent 4, yeah.
Tangent 4, like the way, and they go for it, like they talk about how it's built for speed because it's basically all fucking engines and shit like that. But I mean, and that's something Star Wars continues to do throughout its entire run, even in the prequels, in everything. The designs of everything is so fucking cool. Like that's something that makes their universe so immersive. Is the designs for like the clothing, the characters, like and especially the worlds and the ships and everything like that. Really do a lot of service to immersing you in the Star Wars universe and making it what it is.
And again, and it goes back to that design ethos of the used future, like making everything look like it's at least been used, which that entire design aesthetic, like, I don't think people reference this enough, but every other sci-fi and fantasy movie ever since has done this. Has done the used future look. Like very rarely do we see something shiny like Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, Blade Runner. Like Blade Runner looked like it was caked in mud. Alien, which Ridley Scott did right before Blade Runner, and that Alien came out like 2 years after Star Wars. So Ridley Scott would have started like production on it like right after Star Wars came out, and that had very much the same design ethos with the ship as far as like. Yeah, it looks all
it's kind of
stuff.
Yeah,
that's why actually for the sci-fi fantasy novel I'm writing, I'm actually back and I'm not doing the used sci-fi, the used
future.
Yeah, the used. That's the used future. I'm trying not to go for the used future look with a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, and even nowadays, like. Yeah, you kind of are. Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of sci-fi nowadays kind of seems, like where if we're going to this space, a lot of times they either Star Wars or they draw it from Star Trek. I think like Mass Effect and stuff like that. I think that's
as far as space travel itself goes, there's a lot more Star Trek, a lot more 2001. With movies.
Yeah, but if you're trying to get into like kind of life in space where you want space to maybe not look as clean and polished and nice, you go with more of a Star Wars feel. Like you said, that used future, everything looks like the Millennium Falcon, like it's about to fall apart. So, yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. And so, yeah, I'd say that most sci-fi nowadays that goes on in space, it's either based on Star Trek or Star Wars or, one of those two. And sometimes a little bit of both, but in a way.
My dog's trying to get my attention.
Well, we're pretty much wrapped up, I think, at this point.
I just want to talk about the special edition for this movie in particular. We're gonna do this with at least the original trilogy. Talk about.
Can I say one thing real quick though? Han shot first.
Han shot first.
Okay. Yes, definitely.
He said it himself. Harrison Ford said it himself.
With this one, other than Han shot first, really, if you want to get down to it, so much of the special editions are kind of superfluous changes. The crime.
There was the scene between Han Solo and Jabba. Was that in the original version?
Okay, so they filmed that. That was a deleted scene.
Yeah.
But it was deleted because a lot of the dialogue was repetitive of what just happened with Greedo.
Yes.
That's why it got cut.
Yeah. And also Jabba was originally like human.
Just some fat dude.
He was not a giant slug. Like that scene where Han walks over his tail.
That was CGI.
That was CGI.
He was stepping over something. I think he was stepping over a cable.
I thought it was that showing him lifting up.
No, maybe like him getting lifted up a little bit from stepping on it was CG. I thought it was like there was something else to it. They also CGI Boba Fett into that scene just to make just to kind of like the intent in having that scene in the special edition was to build Jabba up more as an actual force within the Star Wars trilogy.
Which I think made him look more pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like as a guy. Yeah, he looks very threatening. He just lets Han Solo walk on his tail.
He's also way smaller in A New Hope. Even in the special edition, he's way smaller.
So yeah, I don't think it had the desired effect. And
I don't. I think that scene should have stayed on the cutting room floor. Stayed as something that's.
I agree.
I liked from the special edition was the scene between Luke and Biggs. That was the only thing that I think that I felt like they even kind of needed and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the crime with the special edition is that partly due to George Lucas, partly due to 20th Century Fox, they have tried to make it replace the original trilogy, to where it's like really hard to get just straight remastered versions of the theatrical release. Now, like they still haven't come out on DVD. You have to get the.
My dad still watches the video cassettes.
Yeah, you have to get the video cassettes, the digitally remastered in THX for the ultimate in sound and high picture quality. Sunday. Part of me hates that I actually had that entire diatribe memorized. For those who remember, for those who will never forget, for those who will experience it for the very first time.
You still sound like a drag race announcer.
I think he might have been a drag race announcer. I think he might have hired a drag race announcer.
Monster truck madness.
Knowing George Lucas, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So
another thing, like the extended Mos Eisley scene was just really unnecessary.
Yeah.
The CGI lizard things were unnecessary.
Yeah, the dewbacks, wound up. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't need those.
The problem with George Lucas is that he thinks he knows better.
The best part of the special edition, at least as far as the New Hope goes, is so there's this blooper, and it's a meme now, so you all probably already know where the door did not open up all the way, so everybody had to like kind of duck under it, but somebody couldn't see through the helmet, so he ended up hitting his head. In the special edition, he emphasizes that sound, so you hear a really loud ding.
Yeah. Yeah. And they also made a reference to it in episode 2 too. Jango Fett hits his head as well at one point. So yeah. They were That was one thing that I got. Yeah, I don't mind them leaving that there because it's there. It's a thing.
Yeah, and like I said, like the biggest problem with the special edition is that like I like a lot of the additional scenes and stuff. It's just give me that old Star. Like I think Disney has kept promising that they're gonna press the 90s digitally remastered in THX versions onto DVD, and as far as I know, they haven't made good on that promise yet. Which I know is really hard because apparently 20th Century, and this is on Fox, by the way, or maybe it's on Lucasfilm. I don't. It's on somebody, not just George Lucas specifically. They got rid of the original negatives on a lot of scenes.
Ugh, that sucks.
So it's really hard to like actually revert back.
Where it's like, for those purists who feel like the new CGI additions and stuff like that are just too jarring. It's like
there is a version out there. I think you can find it on like
those people I don't have a problem with, to be honest. I have a problem with the people that like to pretend that Star Wars is only 3 movies, because that's not true.
Yeah, and I'll get further with this
because the other things are technically retcons. So if you're a person who I'm not 100% sure where I fall on the spectrum, but like if you're the people, I mean, I am a Han shot first person because that got changed later. That's why that's not okay. You know, the
also just really weird to see his
Star Wars episodes, the Star Wars prequels
when he dodged it.
Yeah, the Star Wars prequels happened, and they were planned. I mean, he had them in his head anyway. First of all,
Yeah,
but, those happened in their original form.
They still happened. Sorry.
Yeah,
They were
the problem with the Han thing is the reason why I'm on the first side. I mean, one, Harrison Ford's on the Han Shot first team, so I've already set. But also because that was an edit. Like that's why that's a problem.
Really,
and with the other scenes, it's like if you,
and it just the scene flows so much better if Han shot first. He's like, "Yeah, I bet you had, blam."
Yeah, exactly.
That was a great scene. Like, why did he fuck with himself? Because it was already great. Like he did a great job.
He gave a reason, but it was a really thin.
It was a really bad reason. It was a really bad reason.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like because he's like trying. I think the reason was along the lines of like, Han kind of is a bad guy. That's why he's great.
Good guys don't.
He lives in a place where you kind of have to get things to survive and stuff like that. That's part of Luke, like the parts of Lucas that aren't as great, where it's like
and I'll get into more of that when we get into Return of the Jedi.
Like, but we liked him because he shot.
Because there's stuff going on like a little bit after Return of the Jedi that like sheds a bit more light on that whole situation. So I'll save that for Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Other than that, final verdicts.
I think this is definitely in my top 3. Which one is like, because the prequels are, in my opinion, probably are all in my top 3 and stuff like that, and which one is my favorite kind of changes from day to day between the 3 of them. But this was like just a fantastic way to start things off. I think it's funny that it kind of got in a little bit of trouble for adding in the scene of Darth Vader spinning off into space and stuff like that, because it was clear sequel baiting. Yeah, I'm glad that it baited for a sequel because we got a great series out of it.
It didn't bait hard for a sequel either. It was pretty solid. Like George Lucas was fine if like Star Wars flopped. He was fine like just leaving it as it is.
Yeah, and I know that there are people out like I'm still to this day surprised when I meet people who say who like absolutely hate it, and I get like I can kind of understand it to an extent, but I still think it's one of the better film franchises in the world, and like I will admit that a huge part of that is the merchandising, but also the movies are just great, and it's one of the it was not the first movie to do the hero's journey, but it was probably the best version of the hero's journey to ever be put out. So that's my thought.
Yeah, did you want to go next?
Yeah. You can go. Yeah, definitely save the best for last. I'm assuming here. But I think one of the things that it's kind of the same thing I said with Avatar was that. No, I like Avatar: The Last Airbender as a show more than I like Star Wars as movies. But with that said, like when I rewatched Avatar, it's like, oh my god, it's even better than I remember. I have to say, the same thing happened when I watched this episode of this, and I haven't seen any of the Star Wars movies in I think at least 4 or 5 years. Maybe not quite as long as it's been since I watched. Maybe it's about around the same time as it's been since I watched Avatar, which was 7 years. By the way, for anybody wondering, I'm talking about Avatar: Airbender, not Avatar, the blue bullshit movie.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Dances with Wolves in Space, okay? It's better than I remember, actually, and I think that's really cool, and I'm really enjoying that. It's the performances by the actors is better than I remember. I'm giving Mark Hamill more credit than I remember giving him before. Han Solo, Harrison Ford is just the fucking best. He's like Toph in real life, basically. It's kind of what the thing is with Harrison, is he's kind of Toph in real life.
Even in episode 6, he's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking great. So that's another thing. And I just remember, like, the effects held up so much. Besides the lightsaber fight, the effects held up so much better than I was expecting, and I think that's great. It really helped me enjoy the film a lot more than I was expecting to. And it didn't feel as slow as I remember it used to feeling, because I think I can appreciate, the setup and then Luke's journey and everything like that more than I used to be able to. So I really like that. And and it's it makes me more excited for the next two at least, definitely for the next two, because it's been a while since I watched them, and I remember really enjoying them, especially 6. That's always I don't know why I always like that one the best, but I'm really excited to see the next two, considering how much more I enjoyed this one this time through. So I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I try making a habit of watching at least the original trilogy once a year, and a lot of times I'll throw in the prequels. The only one I haven't seen anytime recently is Attack of the Clones, just because I haven't had a way to watch that in probably 2-3 years. But Star Wars from 1977, later dubbed A New Hope, or Episode 4 A New Hope, is and forever will be my number 1 all-time favorite movie, bar none. There is beauty and simplicity. There is beauty in this movie. There are excellent characters. It's groundbreaking. It's important and stuff. There's so much about this movie that you can respect without necessarily liking it.
That is true.
And in that respect, and in that matter, I kind of hold it up there with with Blade Runner, which I know it's not for everyone. 2001: A Space Odyssey would be up there too. A lot of the Universal monster movies, particularly Frankenstein, but because it's so much more emotional based, it ends up hitting this level that so few pieces of art ever managed to hit. Wizard of Oz would be up there. Mary Poppins would be up there for me.
Oh, dude, Mary Poppins.
A lot. There's a handful of Disney movies that would hold up there.
Spirited
Away, maybe.
That's my favorite movie of all time. Not gonna lie, that's still my favorite movie.
But certainly, the biggest comparison I can make to Star Wars is Wizard of Oz, as far as just how all-encompassingly splendid the entire ordeal is. In Star Wars, A New Hope is better at being that than any of the Star Wars movies that came after it. Which is why, even though a lot of the sequels and prequel stuff have better effects or better acting or better overall storytelling, they don't capture the heart the way that A New Hope does. Which is why I hold it above Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, even though Return of the Jedi had a different issue, which we'll get to in 2 weeks. But
besides the Ewoks?
Yeah, actually, I'm fine with the Ewoks.
Another quick question. Why is it that Jawas make the same Hawiya battle cry that the Ewoks do? Because that was in the version I watched.
Because they had to make up all their own sound effects, okay?
Because they're speaking the same language.
They did. Oh my goodness. Their sound they had to create their own sound
a lot
library.
of sound effects are really fucking amazing in this movie. It's not
and
just
a lot of them you could actually get for free and use in your own fan projects. George Lucas
the Wilhelm scream somewhere too in the series.
Oh,
in the
I think it was an early progenitor of the Wilhelm scream, if I remember
that's
correctly.
What I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. I
don't think it was the first, but it was certainly early on. It certainly popularized it a bit more than it was.
Isn't the Wilhelm scream like a meme before memes were memes?
Yeah.
And therefore George Lucas is actually a memer before so many other people were memers.
So yeah, Star Wars 10 out of 10 from me.
I mean, I think it used to be
one of only. Just to let you know, I do kind of grade movies on a 10-point scale. Star Wars is one of 9 or 10 movies that have ever gotten a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, for me, it used to be as a single film, it's probably more like an 8, but I'd say it's now at this time through, it's definitely at least a 9. And that's a pretty big jump actually. So
yeah,
like Avatar went from a 9.
If you're getting a 9, if you're getting a 9 for me, you're one of the greatest ever, at least within your genre.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely even better than I remember. It's showing a lot of it. Seeing this, like how well this is done, and like again, the beauty and the simplicity shows how much more poorly done a lot of other sci-fi movies or even fantasy movies and things that I actually also really like that are just not done as well as
yeah,
this.
and
Like,
that this is going to be one of my bullet points for next week. People missing the point.
Good as as much as people like talk about how great a lot of TV shows are right now, there's so many TV shows that I've tried to watch that people that like, you know, on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes get like perfect fucking scores that I can't actually
Walking Dead.
Because, well, a Walking Dead everybody knows is actually shit, but there's a lot of other ones that I try to watch that I can't actually get into because everybody, it's not like as much as you make fun of the Ruby fan base for this. They are not the biggest offender of this. Like everybody thinks that just more stuff happening is good writing, and that's a lot of shows. Like so much is going on. It's like that's not what makes a great. That's what Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's actually fairly simple. Yeah. That's what Star Wars. It's actually pretty damn simple, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah,
Walking Dead is shit. Walking Dead is shit. It's so bad.
And this is why like I'm always a little worried that I'm gonna oversell Star Wars. Just because if you're watching it as an adult, you might not be able to make the connection that I did and you guys did, and that so many other millions of people throughout the last 3 generations of human civilization have been able to make. But there is something there. There's still, I can say with beyond the shadow of doubt, even if you don't end up loving Star Wars, you will find something to at least like.
I would honestly almost say like
something to respect. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it looks in a lot, and maybe you can tell that you can kind of tell that some things are outdated, but as a film, it's in a I wasn't alive back.
Well, I mean, this movie's 40 fucking years old.
It's just as it's still
years old,
so
but it's
amazing,
like a champ.
even in this time, because so many things are inspired by Star Wars, yet they miss the point of what Star Wars is.
Yeah, I'm certainly saving that for Empire Strikes Back.
And it's
because even more than Star Wars, like Empire Strikes Back is the one that really like made the kind of impact to where people were just missing the point.
As bad as the Luke, I am your father line is literally in terms of literary writing.
Yeah,
the Luke, I am your father line is absolute garbage, and it's the worst part of that film. But otherwise,
but yeah, that'll be next week. That'll be next week. I'm gonna cut us off here. We've been going for almost 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And this will probably be the longest one, just because we did so much like build up leading into Star Wars.
You say that now.
Actually, it's either going to be this or Phantom Menace. It's either going to be this or Phantom Menace.
Because wait, Media, you like Phantom Menace? Right?
Yes.
Okay, because it's going to be long then. Because I like Phantom Menace too.
Yeah, so that's going to be a long one.
I really like Phantom Menace.
Anyway,
actually.
plugins. Do you two have anything to plug?
No, still working on.
Yeah, just
follow
our Facebook page. You can join the Discord. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think about Star Wars. And any ideas you have for a Beyond podcast, I'm always up to suggestions. Doesn't mean I'm going to listen to you, but I like having suggestions.
Hey,
I like having that. I like having that retort.
Again, people like Robert is here because he would, post theories and make suggestions about stuff. And
join the Facebook page, like, comment, subscribe to this. I do have fan fiction for Ruby, which you guys might not be here for that. So if you're not, don't bother. But if you have come here from my Ruby videos and from our Ruby podcast, check that out. I do have my own like kind of sci-fi fantasy hybrid series going on called Guardians of Terra, which I have not written anything for a while. It's one of those things that, like, when people actually start reading it, when people finally buy what I'm selling, I'll keep it going. Anyway, so other than that, yeah, have a good night and join us next week when we talk about the sequel that every sequel wishes they were.
Yeah,
The Empire Strikes Back. Anyway, so have a good day.